Do you remember when Jon Moxley took Joey Janela's boots off and just rammed his feet into some thumbtacks over and over again? It was quite a nice moment, almost like we got on a time machine and gone back to a point where old women would give birth to hands and Triple H would have sex with fake dead bodies. Not true, actually. Few WWE matches have ever felt as crazy as the main event we got at AEW's Fyter Fest over the weekend, and I tell you this, I am all right with it. I don't believe this is going to become the be-all and end-all when we're talking about All Elite Wrestling, but at least we know now, if they do want to veer into that territory, they will do so, and that goes for the whole Cody chair shot too. I mean, we'll talk about it in 1 second. It didn't entirely go to plan, but you take those two instances and you push them together, and you had quite the violent show. With all that said, you ain't going to see this kind of madness, or at least this level of madness, when AEW's TV show launches later in 2019. Why? Here's why. As I'm sure you know, this October we are going to get All Elite Wrestling's 2-hour weekly TV show on TNT, and right now we all want to know what it's going to consist of. I'm sure it will kick all the ass, but if you want to make the argument that it could be the Young Bucks sitting there for 120 minutes and devising t-shirts, you're absolutely allowed to do that, because you don't know. Someone can say, look, I don't think you've got this right, I think you've got the wrong end of the stick, but until we've got 100% of the facts, you're allowed to muse however you fancy. Just let your brain set sail and see where it ends up. That's how Columbus discovered America. It probably will just be a wrestling show, and that's fine, but do not expect it to be as gruesome as some of the things that went down at AEW's last pay-per-view. For starters, that would be a really bad idea. While there are some wrestling fans out there that cannot get enough of this, as soon as you start walking down that path, you are going to alienate a good sizable proportion of your audience, because sometimes you can be watching that stuff and think, this is a little bit disgusting. I don't know if I want to show this to my friends. Like if my dad had walked in when I was watching Moxley versus Jenner, first he'd be like, Dad, what the hell are you doing in my house? How did you get in? But he would have gone, what are you watching, son? I'm no longer proud of you. You know what? I never was. And then I have to find out all this stuff about my dad that I didn't want to know in the first place. Now I'm hurt, I'm injured. Aside from that, it would just get really boring. I know I chat about the Law of Diminishing Returns all the time. That's because I don't think wrestling has understood what that law is, so I'm trying to teach it to them. But take something like WWE. How boring is it when every single segment has Shane McMahon in it? After a while, just give me anyone but Shane McMahon, and that would be the same with All Elite Wrestling. If it was just chair shots and sledgehammer hits and barbed wire and tables, eventually you'd be begging, you'd be pleading for a hip toss or a headlock takeover. The best thing about Fyter Fest is that it kind of served as a catalogue or like some window shopping for what the promotion is going to be. It's all so new and it's all so fresh. You need to work out what they are happy to do and what they're not happy to do. So we know, given what we saw, that they will do hardcore crazy death matches, but after the fact, Tony Khan came out and said, yes, okay, fine, but we're not into intergender matches. Now you can argue in the comments whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at least we know the deal. I now have the knowledge as a fan that if AEW is going to build up some crazy feud with turns and twists that has to be blown off with somebody trying to kill somebody else with some barbed wire, they're up for doing it. And I can either choose to watch it or I can choose not to watch it, but either way, if I do, I'm watching it like this. That's the only way I get through them. You also probably couldn't get away with it. I don't think it would fly on most networks, but when you remember that AEW's TV program is going to be on TNT, you've got to hop in your time machine and you've got to go back to the past, because that's the same network that had WCW, and all WCW would do during their dying days would go, well, we could compete with WWE, but we're being told that we have a Standards and Practices Act that means we can't do anything disgusting, lewd or rude. So while Raw was having rings that were on fire and they were sticking nails through people's faces, all World Championship Wrestling could do was take an old woman, turn her into a mother, and hang her from a forklift. I'm being facetious here. In no world did they ever have to do that, but you take my point. So you need to be considerate to these people that have put you on TV in the first place, but you've also got to be considerate to your overall fan base. Now, a couple of these moments from Fyter Fest were so crazy, such as the main event or when Cody got smashed with the steel chair, that it's taken the focus away from other areas, such as the Bucks and Kenny Omega dressing up as Street Fighter characters. Maybe you liked one more than the other, but the point is that we had the choice, we had the variety, we had the love. Not love. Because at no point should AEW be putting itself into a box and painting itself as the ultra-violent wrestling company. You've got more there than that. You've got an amazing roster. You've got to come up with new ideas all the time. Which of course does bring us to the chair shot taken by Cody. And as we do know now, it was meant to be a gimmicked weapon and it went wrong. Now that in itself goes to show that maybe we shouldn't be doing this regardless, but hey look, we all make mistakes, we all learn from our mistakes, we move on. That's what life is all about, and I think everybody involved handled it very amicably. With all the knowledge out there about concussions and CTE, when you do run angles like this, you do run the risk of stealing the thunder away from everything else and shining a giant spotlight on that, because I know everybody around me wanted to talk about once they see that was one, why did they do this, and two, is Cody actually okay? I mean, Darby Allen had a star-making performance that night, and yet barely anybody was talking about him after the fact, other than that trust fall that he did, where he landed back first onto the ring apron, which is the hardest part of the ring, and we can probably have a conversation about that too. But let's just focus on one thing at a time. I mean, when you have Cody with skin hanging off his head and blood pouring out like it was lost and wanting to ask for directions, everybody, of course, is just going to want to have a conversation about that. I still do a little bit. It's just so horrible. So even away from what an executive in an office wants or what does and doesn't make sense, when you do look at the roster you have on your books, that's where I believe the creativity can come from. So I don't want to see MJF eat some barbed wire. I don't want to see Jungle Boy do some kind of crazy flip through a table and then the mat explodes and makes his skin burn off. I don't want to see Britt Baker torn apart by glass. If the story calls for it and somebody comes up with a great concept that makes sense to head in that direction, then sure, have a think about it, but don't make it the be-all and end-all. And certainly don't book that way. Don't think, oh, we've got to do a death match, let's book towards it. Otherwise, you may as well start having matches around commercial breaks. Oh, we have to bow down to the great power that is the commercial break, the ad break. Like it's a living thing that breathes down your neck. It's a commercial, it's an advert, it doesn't even exist. It's inanimate, it doesn't know it's alive. Calm down, I really hate it. So yeah, AEW isn't going to be 120 minutes of violence once every 7 days. They know what they're doing, and we're still just embarking on this journey together, and they're letting you know what they will do and what they won't do. I think that went over a lot of people's heads. Like a big criticism was, why are we having this crazy death match when there was no big story? Because right now, you need to let everyone know what gets a tick and what gets across. Also, the other complainers that are going, it was too violent, they should have done this. What do you want? Because you are the same people that say that WWE is too PG. So either something is too kid-friendly or something isn't kid-friendly enough. Why don't you just go and watch the Care Bears? That isn't me insulting the Care Bears. I love the Care Bears. But hopefully when you watch the Care Bears, it will calm you down. It will balance you out. You'll see, I don't know, the one with the heart on it. I don't know his name. He's all like, ooh, look at me, I'm a Care Bear. You'll see him. The heart will come out as he makes people fall in love with each other or whatever happens in that show. And hopefully it will just make you feel a little bit happier about life. Also, you can't argue the fact that this did work. AEW's Fyter Fest was probably the least spectacular event they've put on, but I still knew people going out there who wanted to watch the main event and they wanted to watch the Cody chair shot. But when they were there and they were sat down and they had it on their television screens, they thought, I'll just watch the whole thing anyway, because why not? And think what you got. Got that crazy Young Bucks match. You got the Lucha Brothers doing their thing. You got all that cool stuff with MJF. And now hopefully you'll start to get invested in those characters. And come October, we can have the Great Wrestling War. The second Great Wrestling War. Really is about the 7th. Let's just do it like that. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about all of this. Like, share, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles. Follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE. Watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon Miller. Thanks very much for watching the Y series. And just to reiterate, as I always like to do at the end, because I like to think only the non-crazies get to the end of the video, I liked Fyter Fest. I liked the violence. I didn't like the chair shot. I said that on ups and downs. Chair shots to the head are too much to me. I've read and I've seen too much. But if you want to put on nuts death matches, I will watch them. I'll just watch them terrified that somebody's going to get hurt. But I think in a way, that's half the appeal. It's like car crash television. And afterwards, Moxley and Janela were just super best friends, super badasses. Anyway, also, I can't get over it. Imagine you only knew Dean Ambrose from his WWE run. I think if the person was stupid enough, you could say, oh no, Dean Ambrose and Jon Moxley are brothers, and his brother is this crazy hardcore guy, and Dean Ambrose was just a pretty solid wrestler. That is how different he is. He has completely circumvented what most people do when they leave WWE, completely changed his name, isn't harking back to any of that stuff at all, and yet somehow he's one of the most talked about things in the entire industry. Wonders never cease.